Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to be joined by Dr. Shannon Colton. If you could please give us a little background on you and what you do right now.
Great, thank you. I'm very excited to be here. So I am a PhD by training, and I spent the first half of my career doing science education outreach and working with faculty and students and getting them to really dive into the molecular world by using 3D printing technology. So that was more of a concrete exposure versus the abstract concepts. And a little over 10 years ago, I moved from that academic sector into pharma, where I supported medical training in a variety of different roles, global, US. I spent some time in the field as an MSL. And then currently I am owning and operating my own business and basically as a training consultant and working with a variety of different companies to help with field medical training and talking, science that how do you communicate effectively? How do you share your scientific story in a way that is meaningful and relevant for providers?
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. So, what initially drew you to making that transition to going from academia and making such an impact there to industry?
So it was a couple of things that really drove that. Partly, I had been doing the same job for about 12 years, and I was looking for a new challenge, a new way to do what I was doing, but in a different, challenging environment. And then partly because a really good friend of mine had been working in industry for a long time and spoke very highly of it. And it was an opportunity for me to challenge myself in a new way and learn some new ways of working and to have an opportunity to work with my friend and have that exposure in the pharma space.
Great. And as you were trying to make that transition, granted, I also made the transition quite a while ago, but, when you were making that transition, do you remember like some of the kind of, whether it's the process of getting the role or actually acclimating to the new role and kind of work environment? What kind of stands out from that time when you were making the transition?
So a couple of things. One, it took a really long time to make headway into the space. It was a challenge. I applied to so many different positions and really didn't understand how networking made such a huge impact until I finally got the foot in the door and started seeing it in action and recognized then that having that broad network within pharma can really make an impact with respect to getting your resume in front of the right people at the right time so that you can potentially get that opportunity to come in and interview and then get to showcase how amazing and awesome you are. But if you don't get that initial interview, the second part just doesn't come to fruition. So that was definitely a learning on my part. And then as I did finally get the role and transitioned in, it was a definite shift from where I had been in the academic world, where I had pretty much complete autonomy over what I was doing, the programs I was running. And I had a group of people that I worked with, but ultimately it was our decision with respect to what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And we would bring in teachers to give us advice and run advisory boards in that regard. However, moving into the pharma space and seeing how highly regulated everything was, big transition. Just things like, as a trainer, I was using slide decks to do the trainings, and all of those had to be reviewed by somebody, depending on the company I work for. Sometimes it was the full medical legal regulatory review board. Sometimes it was just the medical directors. Somebody had to review it and somebody had to sign off on it. And I was very unaccustomed to that way of working. So that was a big transition for me. And then also, I think as I transitioned, just knowing, working with people, experiencing what I was experiencing, these individuals had all of this experience that I just didn't have. And so they had a bank of knowledge that they could draw from that I had to fill in, and I had to do it fairly quickly. Probably me saying I had to do it fairly quickly versus anybody else telling me that. But I wanted to be able to hit the ground running, and I felt like I had this deficit that I had to overcome and to learn very quickly and efficiently how things worked within the space, who did what and where and when, what I could and could not say, how I could and could not say it. I think all of that was just that process of learning and getting acclimated into this different environment.
And overall, as after you made that transition and learning about the industry, what overall do you think made you successful in your roles? Was it the networking, having the right mentors, or was it something that you kind of did on your own in terms of learning about the field itself?
I asked a lot of questions over and over and over again until I either learned it or I figured out what was going on. And I think by asking all those questions and understanding, it just made my life a lot easier, for one. But then two, I think the other bit is that I know how to do my job. And so I could do it. It was just doing it within the right parameters so that I wasn't violating anything inadvertently. Uh, but I think the more that I was able to understand, the more successful I was in accomplishing the tasks that I was set forth. And by being able to do it and do it well, that helped to showcase that I was effective in my role. And so that I could continue to learn more and grow and take on different responsibilities.
And what advice would you have for someone who is not used to asking for help, or maybe that's something that doesn't come naturally to them, and asking those questions? What would you say to someone like that?
Jokingly, get over it. But in all seriousness, I think that when you're coming into any role, any new space like that, there are just going to be things you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And so asking for that help can just like pave the pathway and make it so much easier. So asking the questions to whoever, right? You can just find a friend that you're comfortable with and just be like, hey, I don't understand this, help me out. Or I don't understand here, what's going on with the space, please help me. I know a lot of places will assign you that onboarding buddy or mentor to help you through that transition period. Take advantage of those individuals because they have that information. So it just makes life so much easier if you can do it. So I jokingly say get over it, but a big part of me is kind of like, you kind of just need to, because it'll make your life easier, for one. But second, it also really helps you showcase what you can do really well, because if you are fighting against things that you don't know, and trying to do your job, that just makes it so much harder. Versus if you could ask those questions, figure out what it is that you don't know and how to do it appropriately within the confines of the company's parameters, then you're just going to have that opportunity to shine, because you've eliminated these obstacles that are easy to eliminate, and then you can focus on what it is that you actually can and should be doing.
Yes, that makes sense. Great. And so one thing you mentioned earlier as a part of, what you do now, would love to hear, you mentioned the word training. Could you give a little more insight as to like what training means, and like how that plays into your role? Because I think a lot of people are familiar with, yes, what an MSL is, what medical affairs is, but might not know that in relationship to.
Sure. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So happy to do that. So medical training is a group of people or an individual, depending on the company, who are responsible for helping the team. So that might be all of medical affairs. It could just be the field team. It depends on the company setup, but helping to get those individuals to understand the data. So if we have a new set of released data, the disease state, the mechanism of action, the landscape that's out there from a treatment perspective, the disease state, all of it, especially as people are onboarding. So a big responsibility in my space was to onboard our new field team members. So helping them come in, learn that disease state, learn all the different treatments, learn the data, knowing the content for one, and then second, also, how do you communicate? How do you do your role? So if I'm onboarding MSLs, what do those conversations look like, especially new to role MSL? So really helping them to understand that space. And then as people come in, if they're veteran MSLs, have that experience, it's really understanding the data, the company's approach to how we engage, and then any new data that comes out. So we often would differentiate our onboarding training, so helping those first 3 months-ish of learning the space, but then everything after that as well. So any new Congress that gets, any new publications at Congress, any new resources that come available. We also spend a lot of time doing skills training, so really helping people to level up in respect to their own skill set, whether it's just to become an even better, more effective person in that role, or if you're thinking, what's next for me down my career trajectory? How do I get to that next step? So what are some skills that I might want to foster and hone and really make sure that I know what I'm doing to get to that next space? So medical training is that opportunity to see how all of the data and everything are coming together, but then also teaching it off to the field team and helping them improve in their skill set and what they're doing.
Yes, that's very helpful. And, you now function as a consultant going in and helping companies do this, but is this role traditionally something that companies have internally, or do they generally look to external experts or vendors to help them?
Really depends on the size of the company. So when I was at my last full-time position, I had a team of 4 people reporting into me and covering the medical training needs for the therapeutic areas we covered. But we still used vendors to support what we were doing, whether it was to give us just new ideas on how to do training, or if it was to run a particular meeting or an engagement of some sort. So we used them in a variety of different ways. As I've transitioned into this space, what I have found is I do a little bit of that, but more likely most of my clients at this point are smaller biotech type companies who don't have a full-time trainer available for them. So I can come in and help them in that space, whether it's a one-off, do a workshop and talk about a particular topic, or do some ongoing training where maybe it's every month I do a workshop or a series that we go through for the course of a couple of months together. So however it works for them, we do it, but it really depends on the company with respect to whether they have somebody who's full-time in the role or somebody who just, it's somebody else's additional responsibility, whether it's like a field director or one of the medical directors, so I can come in and help.
Great. And then if someone is interested in getting into, becoming a medical trainer and working in pharma on the more internal role type of side, what's the general trajectory? Do you generally have to, be in medical affairs for a while? Is it, you're expected to, maybe be an MSL for a while and understand the field team? How does it work?
I'm a good example of how it normally does not work. So I would say that typically speaking, people who move into that role generally were an MSL for a little while, had that opportunity to be in the field and understand the role and to kind of live and breathe it. So when they move into that training space, they have that experience upon which to rely. And in fact, a lot of job descriptions, when you read them, the postings, recommend or require having some field experience so that there's an opportunity to really pull from that personal experience and understanding how things work. I did it backwards. I came in from academia into the space because I had spent the previous several years doing education and teaching just in a different space. And then I went into the field and became an MSL after that. So I just kind of did it a little bit differently. But even after I was in the field for a while, I returned to training because that's really where I have the most fun, is being in that space where what I really like about it is that I get a chance to work very closely with the MSLs and helping them get better at their space. But I also have an opportunity to work with the internal colleagues because I work really closely with the medical directors and the medical communications team, the field directors. And so it's kind of this nice little space where I sit, where I get to interact with a bunch of different partners, and all with the goal of how do we help our field team communicate even more effectively with their providers and making sure they understand the data, and then how do they communicate it so that our HCPs understand the data and ask those questions, and then bringing back the insights and the skill gathering, things like that.
Great. Yeah. I love that explanation of you sit in medical affairs, but kind of in between all these different roles. You're the glue that holds everyone together. And overall, how can you help better effectively communicate the data so that the healthcare provider understands this is where this, let's say, product or indication really makes sense.
Yeah, I like thinking about it as kind of we sit at the intersection of everybody and be able to pull in and say, oh, hey, if we've got this resource that's coming out and we have these key points that we need to say as part of the scientific narrative. So what does the training look like to support those endeavors? So it's a really nice position to see across different areas within the internal headquarters position, but still maintaining that connection with the field, because it's a good group of people and they have a lot of really interesting situations that they're in and experiences that they can share. So I like sitting at that kind of intersection between everybody.
And it must be so gratifying to see where a team starts to, let's say, 3, 6, or even like 12 months later, to see how each individual is growing, but how the overall effectiveness of the team is also just on a new level.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite things to do is when we do onboarding is to have people look back when we get to their certification of you're ready to go out in the field, go and forth, but to take a moment to think back to where you were 3 months prior and what you didn't know then versus what you know now, and just seeing that space. We work in this environment where everybody is highly educated and many of them are very high achievers. And so when you come into a new therapeutic area at a new company, it's sometimes a little overwhelming and a little daunting to feel like you're back at kind of a beginner's mindset. And so part of what I try to do when I'm onboarding people is to help them see that beginner's mindset as an opportunity. It's a great space to be in because now you get to learn. And basically for the next couple of months, that's your job, is to learn. And how fun is that? But then reflecting on that after everything is over to really say, like, look how far you've come and look what you know now. And look where you're going to be in 6 months or 9 months or a year, to really envision that. And I've had the privilege of being able to help several different teams over the course of my career launch products. And so that's a whole new space that we're getting into, and just having that opportunity to see the team go from knowing little or nothing, depending on the individual in that space, to being able to go out and have these very engaging and intellectual conversations with providers and being able to pull those insights back into the company. And it is very rewarding to be able to see that take place.
And when you're launching products, are you also liaising and working cross-functionally with marketing and other teams too, even beyond medical affairs?
Yes, depending on where you're at. I work very closely with our commercial colleagues on a lot of things so that we can help synergize and move forward. So if we're thinking about the sales team that's getting ready to launch a product, we'll often work very closely with the commercial trainers to think about what training do you guys need? How can we in medical support you with what you're doing, so that we have that opportunity to not only just communicate that data, but to forge relationships between the commercial team and the medical team, so that when they're in the field together, they have that opportunity beyond just the training to communicate and work really well together in that space.
Yes, wonderful. So, we've talked a lot about what you're currently doing and what you did in industry, but I would love to ask, how did you transition from working full-time at a company for direct reports to deciding to pursue a role where you're working for yourself and maybe building your own team?
That's a good question. I think it was something that I had in the back of my mind for several years. I can remember having conversations with colleagues over dinner and thinking about, what would that look like? We all work with vendors. Like, what would it be to be on the other side of things? And as time wore on and I gained more of that experience within the actual companies and just really understanding how the companies work themselves, it was an opportunity that at one point I was like, you know what, now's a great time to try. Like, let's just go and do this. And I left my last company with that kind of idea in mind around, I'm going to try this. We'll see how it happens. And, I literally put a post up on LinkedIn that said, I'm starting this. I'm going to try it out and see. And in the back of my head, it was always this safety net around, well, if this doesn't work, I'll find another job and it'll be fine. I can always go back. I can always go be an MSL if I want to, or I can go back and be a trainer, or I can find something else that was particularly of interest. So it was kind of like this little safety net in the back of my mind, that it wasn't a do or die scenario. Like, it wasn't, I had to make this work. And if it didn't work, then that was the end of it. This was an opportunity. We were in a good space where I could say, I want to do this for a while. Let me just try it and see where it takes me. And I'm happy to report 2.5 years later, I'm still here and I'm still doing this space. So I haven't had to rely on that safety net, which is great. And I'm really thankful for that. But it was kind of a little daunting, right? You walk away from the stability of having a full-time role with all the benefits and being in that space of security, and just kind of taking a little bit of a leap of faith that this is going to happen. And I've had several people comment over the years of, it's very brave of you. No, you don't understand. I was fully prepared that if it didn't work, I had all of these backup plans in place. I haven't had to implement any of them, thankfully, but I don't see it so much as an act of bravery and more of an act of like opportunity and an act of I was looking for a new way to challenge myself. And this provided that space where I got a chance to try something new. And I had never done a business before. I barely even understand business in a lot of spaces. So it's been a lot that I've been able to learn, and I've been able to grow. And it's been a good challenge for me to help me kind of stay engaged and not fall stagnant and not just feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again.
I think you and I, on that note of like, a lot of people will look at what I'm doing now with working for different clients, forging my own path, and I get the word brave or courageous, wow, or something like that every so often, and we both view it very similarly. Why not try it? And because, we do have, the academic background and a bit of the work experience, I also saw it as, worst comes to worst, I could go back to what I was doing before, which was great. It's not like I was escaping something dreadful. It's just, why not try something new? And why not go for it? And I think that it's really refreshing to hear someone else to talk about it in the same way. I do find it fascinating, however, that you were like, you know what, I'm going to leave and try it full throttle. Oftentimes I hear that people are like, oh, maybe I'll start it on the side. I'll build it up while I have a full-time job. Was that something that you were, decided if I was going to try it, I was going to go all in? Or did it just happen to happen that way? Would love to hear that thought process.
It was more of a, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I figured if I jumped with both feet in, then there was kind of no turning back, in the sense that I couldn't not put the effort into it. I had to make it work. Or if it didn't work, I would go back to plan B, of course. But I kind of felt that if I was doing it at the same time, that I wouldn't have put all the energy into it, because I would have had the day job, so to speak, to support it. And it would have just been easier to say, whatever, it's fine. I'm doing this now. The consulting thing can kind of be on the side, but I'm only going to spend a couple of hours on it. And I can just see myself leaning more into that space where it's backup plan, but I don't need to enact the backup plan, right? Versus if I just cut the cord and just be like, nope, we're doing it. We're going to jump right in. And I mean, I spent a lot of time talking with, I had an executive coach at the time. So I spent a lot of time talking with her about, what is this going to look like? And what am I going to do? And how is this going to do? And she was really awesome in that sense that she asked really good questions. Things like, what does your network look like? And if your network doesn't look the way you want it to look like, what can you do to make that network look even better? Or, if you had to close up your full-time job right now and start your next project, how would you get that? What would you do? What would you hope to accomplish? So I spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking about it and really processing, what does this mean? So that by the time I did officially resign from my full-time job and start this new one, I had already spent so much mental energy thinking about, what is it going to look like and what am I going to do, so that it was ready to go. I didn't have clients. I didn't have anything in place. So it wasn't like I had been doing it kind of on the side all the time, but mentally I was thinking through, like, well, what would I offer? What skills do I have that potentially could be useful to clients? How would I go about advertising myself? What would I do? So I had all of those conversations, both with myself and my coach and friends and my husband, and really thinking through all of it, so that when I actually did enact it, I had a plan that I had been building and put into place, so that I could kind of hit the ground running in that regards.
Great. And I love that you mentioned an executive coach. Can you talk a little bit about how you found your executive coach and what that process was like working together, and how your relationship with them really did help catapult some of your decision making?
Absolutely. So I kind of came at it two different ways. So one, when I was working at my last job, we had an opportunity to apply for coaching. So they had resources available, and those who were interested, we could apply. And so I did, and I got accepted into it. And so I had a coach through this Better Up program that was put into place. And I met with her initially every week for a while, and then I went to every other week. But it was a really interesting way. I had never been coached before. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was kind of really hoping that the person would have all the answers for me, so that I could come in and say, like, this is what I want to do with my life. Help me get there. But that's not how coaching works at all. Coaching is very much a flip of that, where it's I'm going to help you by asking you questions, and you're going to come up with all the answers because you're the one that knows what you want to do. And that was a bit of a mind shift for me because I really wanted someone to just give me advice and to tell me what I was doing and where to go and what to do. And that wasn't how that worked at all. But it was good that way because it helped me really ask myself those difficult questions and really think about, well, where is it that I want to go and what do I want to accomplish? And that really helped me, again, think through and process and plan. And then the second kind of avenue is that I loved being in that coaching environment so much that I wanted to do it for myself. I wanted to become a coach. And at the time when I was thinking about it, it was really for me to be a better manager. I really wanted to not be a micromanager or be in that space. But I kept hearing about, well, are you like a coaching manager? Are you what kind of managing philosophy? And I'm like, I don't know. I just work with my team and I let them do what they're doing. And so I wanted to shift into more of a coaching kind of environment with my managing skills. And so I went in and got support from my company at the time and applied for a program to become a coach. And so in that program, I was being coached by other classmates. So it was a way for us to practice. And so that was kind of my second exposure to being in that coaching environment. And so I was coached by somebody, got excited about it. Then I started doing my own coaching within this class, and my poor team members were thrown into it, not unsuspectingly. I told them straight out that I was going to be trying a bunch of things with them and to let me know what works and what wasn't working. And then being coached by somebody who was in an environment that just happened to work for me. She had a business background, so she was helping me really think through the business aspects of things. And so all of that taken together really helped me see things from a variety of angles, not just my one way of looking at it. It was kind of coming at it with all these different questions and how would I approach it this way or that way, or in response to all the questions that the different people that I was interacting with were asking me. And it really helped me to envision, what is it that I want to do? Where do I want to go with this? And I think in having those conversations, it really helped me understand where I wanted to go. And now I still partner with several people in my coaching class that I took before, where we still do coaching of one another throughout it. And anytime I have an opportunity, if someone wants to practice coaching, I'll be your person. I'll happily be that person because I just find it to be so valuable. They ask questions that I don't think to ask myself, or they'll ask the question I've already asked myself, but then they hold me accountable for actually answering it versus me being like, that's a great question, Shannon, and then just kind of ignoring it and moving on. They actually hold me and make me respond to it. And I think that really helped me a lot over the last couple of years.
I think knowing that background about the executive coach, but also the fact that you're still so actively interested in, helping other people and, also helping yourself even become a better coach, I think makes so much sense, because even the way you were talking about the way that you work with clients and the way that, you're helping people or guiding people to get from point A to point B with whether it's like MSL onboarding or working with the MedComs team, like it makes a lot of sense and it goes really well, I think, with your expertise and what you're doing now. That's very cool.
Yeah. And it's been interesting how many different places I can pull those coaching parameters or those techniques or the approach of coaching into things. And it's been fun for me because I'm very much, if I have a problem in front of me, I want to solve the problem. And so it's been that transition to think about, okay, it's not my job to solve every single problem. I might just have to ask questions of other people, and it's their ideas, their brilliant solutions that are really going to be the important things, not mine. I mean, especially in the consulting space, I'm not the expert when it comes to like their content or their team, but I can ask questions to get people thinking about, well, what is it that you want to achieve, or how do you want your team to get to where they need to be? And, as I go through and work with clients, I can ask those questions to get us started. I mean, ultimately, yes, a lot of the training I do comes out with more of a, here's how we're going to do it. But even within that, it's questions and what are your thoughts here and how are you going to use this to go forward? And so it's been fun for me to see how much of that coaching mentality and philosophy gets integrated into many, many, many different aspects of my life.
Great. Wow. And, now that you've been working for yourself for quite a few years, would love to ask what were some of the most surprising things that you found out for working for yourself versus working for kind of a conventional, whether it's a conventional boss or working in like the conventional kind of industry?
So a few things. I spent so much of my career in a very structured environment where I had meetings or I had workshops that I was running or I had a certain thing I had to be doing at this time. And in this consulting space, I have a lot more freedom in my calendar, which is simultaneously great and wonderful because I get to do fun things and take different classes and learn in my own space. But then also I have to really think about, well, what's work time versus what's free time? I have a tendency to work a lot, and to the point where my husband often jokes that he's going to like turn the Wi-Fi off at some point during the night just so that I will cease working. So I have to be more in charge of my day-to-day with respect to here's what work time is versus here's where playtime is, and making sure to balance between them and not overextend in one area versus the other. I think that's been an interesting exposure. But second, it's also been amazing from that sense of, I feel like for the first time, I really have full balance around that work-life balance. As I mentioned, I tend to work a lot. So for so many years, it was just, I would bring my computer with me on vacations because I always had things to do. And when the kids were in bed at night, I would pull it up and I'd start working on things. And for the first time ever, after I left my full-time job, I actually went on a vacation and I didn't have a laptop and I didn't have things to do. And it was really weird because I'm so used to doing it that way. But I'm embracing it more and more as the time goes with respect to things like taking classes that are of interest to me just to learn, to be in that space. It's nothing to do with my job, but it's just that fun environment around just trying out new things, or traveling and going places and just experiencing being away without feeling weighted down because I've got a thousand things that I feel like I should be doing. So that was it. That's been a big learning on my part. And then of course there's always the joy of managing your business from just like the administrative and sending invoices and tracking them down and making sure you're getting paid and making sure you're following all the different companies' regulations and rules about how to submit invoices and all of that. That's not the fun part. The fun part comes, when you're actually interacting and working with people. But I've learned a lot within that space around how to manage a business just from that day-to-day operational side of things.
I can also resonate with, taking my laptop on vacation and being like, oh yeah, I know everyone's going to bed at 10 p.m. anyway. I might as well just, check on, what's going on or what's new or something that I can just help a client very quickly at night. So I definitely resonate with that. And I think that that's something I'm also learning in the whole working for yourself, figuring it out situation is like
it's a process.
It is a process. And it's like going on vacation without my computer is, I did it for the first time in the holidays, loved it, and hope that I can do that again a few times this year.
Hey, that's great that you did it because it takes a lot of work to be able to say like, no, I'm actually going to leave this here.
I still check my email a little bit. We can't lie here.
Right, because your phone will attach to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like other people check social media apps and I'm here like checking my email. It's dreadful. But anyways, we're all learning. So as you got started, how did you find your first clients? I know that you worked at quite a few companies before, so you have that great built-in network. So, was that a part of it? And also, as a follow-up, what if someone doesn't have that network just from working at previous roles? How would you suggest that they find clients?
Good question. So the first client I had came from somebody I worked with previously at a different company. And when I had made my post on LinkedIn, he reached out and he's like, hey, I need you to do some work with me. And I'm like, wonderful, let's do it. Because it was like somebody I could work with, right? And I would say almost all of the clients that I've worked with have come from previous colleagues in the sense that I've worked with them somewhere. And then if it's not them, it's somebody that they knew. So that word of mouth that has extended to say like, hey, we worked with Shannon on this. If you're looking for somebody to help you, here's our contact information, and be in that space. So that by far is my biggest source of clients, is through that network that I've established. And then if the other bit that probably ties in if you don't have that network, I also attend a conference every year, the Medical Affairs Strategic Summit, which is offered through Fierce Pharma. And it's medical affairs focused, and it's usually really focused on the field team. So at least the part that I attend, it's the MSLs and the MSL directors. And so I attend that. I try to do a presentation with some former colleagues of mine as a way to build the network, but then also to kind of showcase a little bit around what I can do, and then have conversations with people at those conferences to find out what is it that they need. And even if it's not them in particular, that they wouldn't necessarily hire me if they've got a trainer or whatever, but to find out what the needs are, what the current space looks like, because I've been out of it now for 2.5 years where I'm not in it every single day. So having those conversations is really helpful for me to think about, okay, if this is the need, what can I potentially offer as a trainer to help cover that need or to support in that particular area. So between that conference and the network, that's been really good for me, and having those connections to establish a client base that I'm working with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, as I love the idea of going to conferences and showcasing, what you're able to do in a talk, and then being able to speak with people later, whether that's to bring in new clients or to just network with people, I think is amazing from an in-person perspective. Do you have any other networking tips for people who are listening? Most people who are, tuning into our streams are very, very interested in either breaking into industry, or maybe they're in industry, but they want to transition to a different role.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing you can do is that network is huge, but is to make connections and make strategic connections. By that, I mean, like, if you are somebody who's looking to break into industry, if you can find the one person who's willing to talk with you, whether it's at a conference that you've gone to or you've reached out through LinkedIn. And when people reach out to me, I try to take time to meet with them, even if it's just for 15, 20 minutes, just to chat, because I know how hard it is to get into industry, and having that connection just really helps. So I try to pay that forward for all the people who are very kind to me. So being in that connective space for one, but then asking to say, like, well, is there anybody else that I can talk to? For example, a friend of mine has a grad student in her lab who's really interested in doing work in pharma. And so she's reached out, we've had conversations, but then I've also done well, what are you interested in learning about? Conversations with her. And then I find people to say, like, hey, would you be willing to chat with this individual? And then setting up some time for them to connect and do that. So kind of using that network to broaden your network even further. And what I have found is that for the most part, people are happy to have those conversations. So if you can make a connection, then ask for additional connections. And I know it's hard. I know sometimes it's awkward, but sometimes it's just that, who else could I talk to? Like, I want to know more about a certain thing. So if you're looking at the people who are in a particular role and want to transition to another one, they have a network already for, if you're in a company, you can be in that space right away. But then thinking about, like, if I'm an MSL and I want to be an MSL director, let me go talk to the MSL directors and just say, like, hey, can I spend 15 minutes chatting with you about what do you do in order to become a medical director? What are some skills that you have found valuable? What do you really love about this particular role? And why did you move into this space? And just having those conversations, I think, is really amazing and awesome. It's so helpful to hear people's thoughts in terms of, like, what they did or what they wish they had done a little differently, and making those connections. And then someone that I used to work with, one of my colleagues, she set up a series that we ran for our MSLs, especially for that COVID time when we weren't traveling and we had some kind of airspace to fill, if you will. So she set up this wonderful series called Colleagues and Coffee, where we just had people come on and talk. She identified somebody every month to come in and chat about what their career path was like. So where did they start? How did they get to where the next role, the next role, the next role, the next role? And it was kind of an open fireside chat sort of scenario where you could ask questions and really hear and think about, like, well, what was advantageous for them? Did they have a mentor? Oh, maybe I need to get a mentor. Or they did a particular, secondment of some sort where they got an experience doing a different role for a little while before they transitioned into that role more full time. And so hearing other people's journeys, I think, is really helpful in helping to identify, like, paths forward for you and what you might be able to do. So if you don't have something like that in your space, maybe you can set it up. Maybe it's something that you can put forward. And if not, just start connecting with people and asking those questions, and do it independently, even if it's not part of a formal setup.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the reasons why we started the office hours series at the MSL Academy is, people want to hear these stories, and oftentimes they feel really intimidated to reach out to a current MSL at a company they're interested in, because they want to make sure they make the right impression, and get pretty nervous about those things. And so to be able to showcase a lot of the current MSLs that have either been through the program or just that are in my network or in other some of our other coaches networks is really great to just hear their perspective and get some of those questions answered. And the amount of engagement and people that are interested just really goes to show every time. I feel like we do, not much publicity, just posting it on LinkedIn, a little word of mouth, but people want to know that information. So I agree more with, trying to share as much of those stories as possible, especially in like a more like kind of audio, like engaging format.
Yeah. I especially like it when we can talk to people who do not have a kind of linear approach to their world, that it's the people who do the, and then I spent some time here and then I did this, and just having that opportunity to hear that, every experience is valuable and it's not mandatory to be successful. You have to have this one trajectory and that's it. You can go and do a lot of variety of things and have different steps. Like maybe you go quote unquote backwards in the sense that maybe you take a role that isn't quite a lateral move, but you go and you get that experience so that you can propel yourself further and forward with the next experience. So I like people when they tell me their journeys and they're kind of all over the place, because I feel like that is real and that is more relatable than somebody who had this more meteoric rise of I was an MSL and then I got handed this position and I got handed this position and I got handed this position. Like that's not reality. And so having people come in and share their experiences, I think is so helpful in helping people to identify where they want to go and how to get there.
Absolutely. And also like transferable skills is something I talk about all the time, because it's those people who, have the more unconventional roles, or they don't go from fellow to, manager to MSL and all of that. Those who have figured it out along the way, and the ones who have had the more unconventional paths have really figured out how to use the skills that they've collected, in their toolbox from all these different roles, and how they can then be, a really successful, anything, whether it's an industry or an entrepreneur or otherwise.
Absolutely. And I think if you have people who know what those transferable skills are, sharing that with other people where you can start to think, and especially if people are trying to break into industry, to be able to say like, well, this is what I do, and being able to look at that skill set and go, oh, well, that means you can do X, you can do Y, and just being able to look at it through a different lens and with that different perspective, I think really helps people to identify, oh, okay, this is possible. I can do this. I do have the skill set. I just call it differently. And if I just use your language, like moving it more into like business parlance, for example, then it becomes easier and more manageable and attainable.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things that you brought up in one of your previous responses was, the importance of mentorship and, having an executive coach. Do you still work with that same executive coach, or is it something that you're continuing to do as kind of interface with someone who can be that, third party, person who you can bounce ideas off of?
Yeah, I don't have the same person I started with so many years ago now, but I do have other people, and definitely take advantage of it when I can. I have that network that's opened up just because of where I'm at with the experience and going through the coaching training. But like I said, anytime I have that opportunity, if someone says like, hey, I really need some experience, or I'm looking to practice this, would you mind being my person? I'm like, absolutely, I'd be happy to be your person. And I've currently barter coach with several people too, so that I'm coaching them and they're coaching me. And I think that has worked out really well for me as well. So it's been kind of almost part of my world. I don't know what I would do without it, just because it's been part of my world for so long now that it would be kind of a little bit of a strange transition. Not impossible, obviously, but it's just integrated into my day-to-day that I just kind of take it as part of my world, as opposed to this luxury. I almost feel like it's a necessity at this point.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your insight. As we're, closing up, I would love to, ask, what are 3 things that you'd love to share, like tangible takeaways for the listener? That could be, having to do with, being a medical trainer in industry. It could be, being a successful MSL. It could, have to do with your consulting business. So just 3 things that you wish you knew before you started, and things that are be that, or it could be the, 3 kind of tangible takeaways for people listening.
Let's see. All right. In no particular order, so it's not prioritized. I would say first, ask questions, be curious. And that I think extends to not just about career development or about the science that you might be working with, but just genuine curiosity, I think, goes so far with respect to building better, deeper with your colleagues, with if you're an MSL, your providers, family members, friends, whoever. I think that curiosity is really critical for being successful. It helps you to learn, it helps you grow, it helps you to see things that maybe you didn't see before. So ask questions, be curious, dive in there. I think second thing, when training is offered, jump at the chance, whatever the training is. I think that oftentimes we get in our heads that if I am a successful professional, I know what I'm doing. I don't need anybody else's assistance. I don't need it, right? Or training becomes viewed as a form of punishment because I have to go through this training. And I don't think of it that way. I think training should be fun. And if it's not fun, then maybe we need to reevaluate how that training program is being implemented. But the company is investing in you by providing you with this training. So take the opportunity. And if it's not offered, ask and see what might potentially be available. So things like, does your company have a coaching program that you could potentially use as a way to help you get the coaching that you want? Or do you have a mentor program that you could potentially explore for your own development, that sort of thing? Just opportunities. And I know several companies have managerial training programs. If you're interested in being a manager, that's an opportunity for you to learn how to be a manager, to build that skill set. So if an opportunity comes up, you're ready to get. So use training as an opportunity to help you achieve whatever it is that you're looking to achieve, whatever goals you have in mind, but try to take advantage of it when it's offered. And then the third thing I would say is that your network really, really helps you in so many ways, and not just about getting the next job or getting promotions or getting whatever it is. Like, the network is there because it's an opportunity for you to learn from other people. So if your network includes people who are in different companies, you can learn about how different things work or different ideas that might come up on what you could potentially do in your role, or an opportunity to, learn from people, to be exposed to things. LinkedIn is great because if you click on it and you like it or you comment on it, it shows up in your creating space of it. So it exposes you to different areas, different content, different people. And I think the more we can make those connections and be in that network space, I think it really does help you be more successful over time, because now you've got this group of people that you can ask questions of, or you can learn from. Or if something does come up and be like, hey, I'm really looking for a new role in this space, what's out there, that connection can really help you take those next steps. And then if you want to be brave and courageous and start your own company, that network is really important for you to do that as well. So I think that network kind of gives it. So to sum up, I would say ask questions, be curious. And then second, take advantage of any training that you have available. It's your professional development. It's your opportunity to grow. And then build your network and use it as a way to extend and learn from, so that you are just constantly consuming information. It'll just make you a better person.
Wow, incredible takeaways. So if, people want to learn more about you or follow you on LinkedIn, how can they do that?
Oh, definitely. Just reach out. I'm there. You can find me. You can Google. I'll go through it, and Shannon Colton. But yeah, I am happy to connect with people. And like I said, I try to always make the time. If people want to chit chat, I'm happy to do so. So feel free.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. I had a really good time.
Oh, I'm so glad. Alrighty. Talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.